I mentioned in a previous segment that the terms witness, consciousness, and non-dual awareness are used in different ways by different people. So this can lead to confusion and even unnecessary contention. And I talked a little bit about how the term witness or witness consciousness is used. Now I'd like to say a little bit about non-dual. This is, once again, possibly an ambiguous phrase. One might say that a non-dual awareness is an experience of the oneness of subject and object. From that perspective, actually, there are a number of ways that non-dual awareness can occur. One of them is that there's a touch or a sight or a sound that arises, and there's no feel or image or talk reaction to it. So there's just that touch or that sight or that sound without a sense of an observer separate from it. And so there's an experience of being that touch or that sight or that sound. In the Yoga Sutras, that's referred to as sabija samadhi. Samadhi in the sense of merging, but there's a seed there, sabija. The seed is that there's a thing merged with. A deeper experience of oneness, which some people might call non-dual awareness, occurs when not only does the feel, image, talk reaction not arise, but the touch, sight, sound itself arises, but it never fixates. It just becomes a flow. And if any feel, image, talk arises, it also is just a flow. And the two flows merge and become a single wave. And then that wave dies down into nothing, into zero. The touch, sight, sound world and the feel, image, talk self arise as an interacting wave, unfixated. In between expansion and contraction, they just sort of vibrate and interpenetrate. And then when they die away, in that nothingness is the oneness of subject and object, or the true observer, from a certain perspective. So some people might call that non-dual awareness, because there's in an absolute sense, subject and object have been transcended. Patanjali calls that nirbija samadhi, or merging without an object that is merged with, in other words, a formless merging. In some Zen lineages, it's called ryo-mo. Ryo means both, and mo means disappeared. Both subject and object have disappeared into the one nothing. However, personally, I would prefer to use the phrase non-dual awareness to refer to something else, something more ambitious than the things I've just described, which are already very ambitious. Just to have the experience of just hearing or just seeing, that takes quite a bit of training typically. To have the experience of formless merging, nirbija samadhi, a lot of training. What's more ambitious than that? Well, what's more ambitious than that, and what I would personally like to use the word non-dual awareness for, is the habitual abiding in the cycle of zero polarization over and over and over again. So that sounds very abstract. What do I mean by that? Okay, so let's say that you have that experience, or it's not exactly you have that experience. There is the experience of both disappearing into zero, okay? Both the objective world and the reactive world of thought and feeling. They've become a wave, and those two waves have merged, and they've flattened into a oneness that is a nothingness. And you are that nothingness. That is the true self, aka the no self. What's next? Well, that nothingness is going to break apart and once again polarize, and in the cleft, self and world will regenerate. When the self and world reappear, if you realize where they've just come from, then the self and world are not fundamentally separate from that zero. They're arising, in a sense, inside zero. And there is very quickly a return to zero. And then the next arising arises sort of inside zero, and there's a return to zero. So that you go through your day hundreds and hundreds of times a day, having an experience of touching the timeless, the zero, and then time being born, but not really the fundamentally separate. The umbilical cord that connects to the zero is not completely severed. So you're born, but not really born. And your world comes into existence, but not really, because it's still enfolded in the two sides of zero. And so you come, in the words of the Neoplatonist philosophers of Western antiquity, you come from the good, return to the good, without ever really leaving the good in any fundamental sense. Then this is non-dual in the sense that there's not a separation between source and the daily life that's born from source. So you're just bopping around in the world doing what anybody does, but you and your world are born but not really born. So there's not a fundamental cleft from a practical point of view between the transcendent and the ordinary. And so there is not, that's the real non-duality as I would have it. Creator and creation, that duality has been seen through. So a person that, in terms of the Zen ox herding pictures, that's somebody that is firmly mounted on the ox, okay? Can never be bucked off the ox, no matter what life throws at them. So you're riding this powerful ox called consciousness or emptiness or source or God or nature, and you can't be bucked off by whatever wells up from the inside or hits you from the outside. You're still never fundamentally separate from nothing. I would use the term non-dual awareness for that.